And wow, if there's anything that just illustrates, Father, how things just are able to go viral and take off around this world and get people talking, it's the events of today. And I pray that we would begin to not replace, but invite you into those conversations, to seek truth in the middle of those, and that through that your redemptive power to invite people into the freedom that is in Christ would be evident. And I pray that we tap into that. I pray that you would give us the words to say, and give our viewers and listeners eyes to see and ears to hear the things that are profitable to them. I pray that they would take deep root in their hearts. The things that don't apply to them, I pray that you just allow those to fall by the wayside. Bless this conversation. Bless this technology. Thanks for it. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Hey everybody, welcome back to The Pursuit. As you can see, we have an extra guest in the studio today with us. It's John, Jeff, and Rachel. We're going to be doing this on a periodic basis. So, Rachel, welcome to The Pursuit set.
I would only ask you to restate, she's not a guest.
Well,
she's family.
She's now family.
She's family. She's family.
But it's maybe
Mi casa es su casa. No, this is your house.
No, but you guys treat me so nicely. It feels like I'm like, you know, like I'm in someone's house. They're trying to impress me or something. You guys are so great.
You're kind of our little sister, to be honest with you.
I'll take it.
Yes.
I don't have any older siblings.
There you
I
go.
would love
There you
to
go.
be a little sister to somebody. So
There you
please.
go. We're older brothers
Two
now.
older brothers.
Just means I
Well,
can
I'm glad,
annoy you.
and I'm just glad you didn't say we're like your dads. You know,
Well, it could have been that too.
It sort of put us in the next age
But
bracket. You know what I mean?
I tried to take advantage of the opportunity. Hey, welcome. I'm glad you joined us today. Today's episode is being brought to you by our friends over at Trinity Team Real Estate, family-owned operation. If you are wanting to do anything in the real estate world, anything from HOA management, crazy, to commercial, or just you want to go buy a new house or new condo or something like that, this is the team you need to turn to. Eric Fritzky and his team do an incredible job. Make sure you reach out to them. Good buddy of ours, avid listener and follower of The Pursuit. So thank you, Eric, for all that you do for us. And I hope someone out there can reach out to you and buy that next home, that next dream home that they have. You can find them at trinityteamrealestateco.com. So thank you to Trinity Team.
Hey, can I give a free plug on the heels of that? Because you almost said Eric Malinsky, didn't you?
I almost did.
You did. I know you so well. And let's plug real quick. You want to get some really good red wine, white wine as well? Piatelli Vineyards.
Yes, Piatelli.
Amazing.
Out of Argentina.
Yeah.
Wonderful Malbec. They've got a great cab. They're really, really good stuff.
Yeah.
That's a free plug. That's at least worth a glass of wine.
A glass of wine. I'm just trying to get us a glass
they
of wine.
kind of go together. Don't you buy a bottle of wine if you buy a house? Or
No
if you
doubt
do,
about
like,
it.
Yeah, a big financial deal.
Mhm.
Maybe a few.
There you go.
So after you buy your new
Absolutely.
house, buy a bottle of Piatelli, their
wine.
Grand Reserve, and you'll be
Really happy.
Happy as a lark.
Yeah, happy you did it before all the interest rates. go.
Exactly. Hey, so we've got some interesting topics. We're going to go current events today, and we've got a lot that we could choose from. Quite honestly, there's a lot going on in this crazy world.
Mhm.
But we've kind of talked amongst ourselves before the camera was turned on, and we thought, a great topic of conversation, which is on the tip of everyone's tongue, it's all over social media, is what took place just the other night in the Oscars, when Will Smith got up and put a little whooping on Chris Rock. And so we just want to talk about that. I just want to start with this. Tell me your initial reaction. John, let me start with you. Your initial reaction when you saw that unfold.
So, irregardless of the reason for it, I hadn't quite processed that yet. So we can talk about whether it's justified or not, and there's a whole debate about that in the realm of what it's allowed, what's allowable for comedians to talk about, and so forth. My first reaction was, I see a man who had an inappropriate emotional reaction, essentially a road rage incident in the middle of the Oscars, okay, and allowed himself to lose control. I saw a person receiving that who was remarkably self-controlled. Probably the sense that there's two wrongs in this situation, and realizing that there should be reconciliation. Those were my initial thoughts before you see the rest of it unfold.
Okay. Rachel, you haven't actually seen the slap heard around the world.
No. I've only experienced it through the eyes of all my Facebook friends and all the, I mean, and Babylon Bee and Instagram and, everything else. And my reaction kind of is like, I can't believe this is what everyone's talking about.
Mhm.
I'm a little shocked. I'm a little taken aback. We've had 2 years of crazy. We have the globe on fire. We have economic crises. We have all sorts of areas for the church. And somehow this has captured everyone. And I don't know why that is. There's a psychological reason, I'm not sure. I also don't trust whether or not it was planned or not, because suddenly the Oscars are now being paid attention to, and I don't think they were previously. But
And by the way, on that note, I also read, whether this is true or not, that Chris Rock is touring, and
Oh,
his
is that
ticket
right?
sales skyrocketed. They
that
sold more tickets in one day after this than he'd sold like the previous 2 weeks prior to that. Just as a side note.
I'm just saying, guys, okay, there are no coincidences in the world. And when you look at how I feel like as a public we get played all the time, and we don't really like to admit that because we want to feel like we're living in a real world. But with the internet and technology and with TV and with actors and with, news, just everybody, you'll have to agree, like, the whole world's a stage has never meant more, at least in my lifetime. And so I just looked at it and I thought, is that for real? And I guess if it is for real, I will say this. Will Smith, like, if that's how you're acting in public on a camera, could you imagine what might be going on mentally behind closed doors? That's clearly something that there's some fixing, there's some stuff that needs to be addressed there.
Yeah.
And there's probably other brokenness. And I think as believers, we're always trying to think about that, right? What other brokenness is contributing to this? This isn't just random. He didn't just one day decide he was going to break like that.
Right.
So there's, love and grace for everybody, clearly an out of bounds move, no matter what you believe about it.
So there's a lot there. Gosh, there's about 6 or 7 topics I could pull out of
Exactly.
those opening comments, which is wonderful. And let me start here. Make sure we go back to the whole world as a stage now in this season, because that's a really important point that I want to talk about and get your thoughts on. But let's go back and talk about it from this perspective. Why do you think the world has been so captivated by this moment? Why is that? What are you guys' thoughts on that? John, do you have
Asking me? Yeah. And I said this to you guys in private earlier, but to some degree, while I acknowledge what you just said, in fact, after I didn't know what you just added to that bit of it, and I almost feel like if we had a gavel, we could just go, case solved. It was planned. It was staged. But whether it was or not, your question now was about our reaction to this thing that many people believe was genuine and some people believe was not. And my reaction to that is, I think that whether we're talking about Ukraine, COVID, election, or a pop culture kind of a topic like this, that it evokes a reaction from us to the degree that some of this stuff lifts a mirror up to ourselves. That it triggers something in us, some anger that either says, I hate that he did that because I'm just like that. Now, we may not come to that realization quite yet, but I'm realizing it, and again, I'm not pointing the finger at anybody else, only to point the finger at me, that what is it that it gets me so upset about this topic or this thing or the election or COVID? There are objective things for sure, but there's also a layer of personal subjectivity that says, I see myself in that, and what I'm so angry about is really what I'm dissatisfied in me about, right? So there's a layer of that.
Okay. Rach,
Yeah.
what do you think? You have a thought on that?
I think the last few years have primed us to be a divisive, classless society. Just no class, right? No, think about the 1940s. Is that going to happen?
You were alive for that.
Yeah, it was a much different time then, Rachel.
I just remember, so my grandpa always used to say this. I don't know why. This is one of my memories of him, but he was World War II generation. And he used to talk about how, if there was any guy in his group, in their group, who was going to take a drunk girl home or even attempt it, they would have beat him up. I mean, they just did not believe in behaving in a classless, low end way, right? We are human beings, and we have some dignity, and there's a way to deal with that situation. If you don't like that, there's a way to do it. And I know I feel empowered enough to know the way to deal with that. But I feel like we've been primed to be divisive and reactionary, and people, I don't know, I mean, how many reality shows and crazy reality TV and the Kardashians, how much priming have we had as a society through Hollywood, through the news, that we're all just divisive, and we could even go around just smacking somebody or whatever. I mean, that would not usually, I feel like, historically in our society have been considered defendable, even though I see people defending it, or acceptable in any way, shape, or form. And so I think there's a part of us that we're already primed to want to divide over something, even something as unimportant as one actor hitting another at a show. I mean, it's really not globally important, but we put so much importance on it because we want to fight with each other. And that's what I'm seeing happen. That's why so many people are posting about it. They want to fight. They want to defend their guy. They want to pick a side. They want to have division. And I'm a little concerned, like, why we're talking about this?
Yeah. So let me use a different word. Let me use a different word besides division, which is accurate, 100%. But also what I see manifesting itself here, and it's manifesting itself in our culture. That was simply a microcosm of what's happening in our culture, and that is people are easily offended. Let's talk about offense, because clearly Will Smith in that moment and his wife were offended by what Chris Rock said, and some could look at that and say, I don't understand the level of offense. Does what Will Smith did, does it correlate to the words that were spoken and the offense that was made? That's really not the point of the conversation here. The point is, let's talk about offense, and let's talk about the role of offense. Let's take it now into the faith realm. And as followers of Christ, what role does and should or should not offense play in our daily journey, in our walk with Christ?
Well, I think what you said, actually, in answer to his last question applies even more to this, that idea of putting the mirror up to yourself and going, why am I triggered by this? Why did this get to me? What is it in me that's not whole and healed enough? That I'm not finding my identity in the Lord enough right now, that I'm letting somebody else define me or letting that thing in. I mean, I think what you said, right?
Yeah, I'd say, Rachel, that I think that's a healthy way of when you notice in yourself something, right? Something I say, something I do, something I project, right? That a healthy thing to do would be in your internal conversation to ask yourself the question, why? Why did I do that? Like, what was it inside me why did I get triggered, right? But I think that most people probably don't go kind of into their daily life with that level of self-awareness, because it's vulnerable. It's maybe people would even out there say it's weak, to do that, right? Just be who you are, dang it, right? And let people deal with it, right? And that's kind of the attitude across at least America, if not the world today. But what we all have, whether we will say it or not, or even realize it or not, is we walk around with an internal dialogue, a narrative about this external world, about events, people, things, and we're looking for corroboration points. We're looking for, I told you that Hispanic people are always like that. I told you that, right? And we're looking for those things that confirm our perspective on something, because we don't want to be wrong. And in that scenario, I can imagine that what I look at and say, that was that out of bounds? I don't think so. Was it inappropriate from the standpoint of, but comedy is fairly inappropriate just across the board, right? So I look at that and I say, okay, what narrative did Will Smith have that was going on, that was playing out right in front of us, about how he feels about himself or Chris or his wife, that would cause that type of reaction?
Okay, I want you guys to finish this sentence, okay?
I want you to finish a sentence.
Well, you're welcome to ask questions.
Yo, when are you
trying
going to
to
answer your questions?
Get in there, Rachel. Get in
Okay,
there.
finish this sentence. Okay, fill in the blank. The root of offense is. What's the first word that comes to your mouth? to your mind, the root of offense is
Selfishness. That's my
selfishness.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bitterness.
Bitterness. Okay. So you're both speaking of offense from a negative perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Is there ever a time
Mm-hmm.
in our faith journey that offense comes from a healthy place?
Yes, I think yes. I think there should be an aspect, you talked about it before we started, of being a protector of your family, being a protector of the loved ones and people in your life, where that emotional trigger to something is actually cluing you in that something inappropriate is taking place. And perhaps there is a boundary and a barrier that you need to put up. And it's probably not punching someone in the face, usually probably not. But maybe there is a boundary that needs to go up with someone that, and that little trigger can kind of clue you in that something is wrong.
Okay.
I'd add to that. I agree with that. I think, Jesus showed us that if you don't think that he was offended about the bartering and trading that was happening in the synagogue, you're crazy.
Right.
He walked in there having it said he made a cord of however many, the whip of how many cords. Like, he's thinking about that and offended.
This is a response, not a reaction.
A response. Okay, say more. I'll stop. Say more about that. Make a distinction.
Meaning in that, okay, let's use Will Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Will Smith reacted to an offense.
Yeah.
He was offended, and his emotions reacted in a moment, and it came out in violence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jesus, instead of reacting to what he saw, what you're describing is he took time, and he contemplated, and he considered.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a gap of time that took place between the time that he first observed this, and there was also a calculated response to the action that he was seeing, right?
Yeah.
My guess is we don't know. We don't know what happened in Jesus' spirit.
But wasn't he also, there's a Bible verse about him being passionate that was prophetic,
Mm-hmm.
that he would be passionate about his Father's house. And I can't remember where that verse
Mm-hmm.
is. But that offense was going on in his house.
Yeah.
That was happening in his home. So he is protecting his family
Yeah.
in that moment, which is we all would agree is appropriate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think I guess the point I was trying to make by asking you guys to fill in the blank, it was kind of a trick question because I think we normally think of being offended as something that's coming from a negative place. And I don't think that's always the case. I think to the examples you guys provided so eloquently, that there's a time where offense rises up out of righteousness and a desire for righteousness and a desire for the things of God, right?
Yeah.
And the difference is, I think, is the ability to have that mirror up in front of you and really take a step back and ask the question, why am I offended right now? Right? This thing that was said to me, that was done to me, that I've just observed, whatever it might be, everything from what happened to Will Smith to something that happens to us in a grocery store, or we're dealing with an employee or a business partner or whatever, and we feel that rising up within us, right? That offense, that emotion begins to boil up within us, right? That's a very natural thing.
Right.
But I think what we're called to do is to have the self-awareness, right? To take a step back and go, okay, what is the root of this? Because if we can understand the root of it, it will absolutely determine ultimately what our reaction is going to be.
Yeah. It's almost like an alarm system if you think about it like that, right? There's an alarm going off inside me. It's called offense. Now, what is that tied to? Is it tied to, what standard is it tied to? Is it tied to my standard of I'm the middle and the center of the universe and the most important thing on this planet? Therefore, I'm offended at how you treated me. Because how could you treat royalty such as me? And I hope that my sarcasm is coming through for those that can't see me and are listening, because that is not what I think of myself. But the alternative is the standard, I think, Rachel, where you were going, around the standard of righteousness, and Hutch, what you just said as well, that really describes Jesus's response, not reaction, to say, I am offended because the standard of righteousness. In fact, isn't there a scripture that says that offense came by the law? Offense came, I'm going to have to look that up later, but But what? And that we would all be found guilty before the law. Why? So that we'd have a need to understand the
Well,
need for
to
a
understand
Savior.
we're all, at our very core, we're all offensive, actually. When you put up the standard of Jesus, when you put up the standard of the law, when you put up the standard of righteousness, we're all found lacking. We
Totally.
don't have the DNA of Christ until we take on his DNA. But I feel like we talk about offense. I mean, you're right. There's this righteous way to look at it of, when there's a violation of God's kingdom, when there's a violation of his things, I think it's good to have that internal clock. When there's a physical violation, it's good to have that internal alarm.
Yeah.
But so much of the offense I see in our culture is not that.
Mm-hmm.
It is, I am personally offended everywhere I turn. And it seems to be from a place of pain. It seems to be from a place of hurt or a place of a lack of identity or just complete godlessness, to be honest. Like, if you are completely godless and this is the only life you're living for, you're going to be going around trying to find whatever you can get, and anything that gets in your way becomes offensive, right? So we have a cultural thing happening with everyone being offended all the time, and it's my right to feel the way I want to feel every day. Well, that's not true.
Yeah.
If you don't make me feel the way I need to feel, I'm offended. If you don't give me my emotion, I'm somehow responsible for everyone else's emotional needs, and vice versa. I see that playing out a lot in our culture.
Yeah, I've for about the last year and a half, maybe even longer than that, I've had an ongoing prayer conversation with God, just saying, God, help me not to be easily offended. And I think there's a difference between easily offended, because that doesn't mean don't allow me to be offended. It means don't allow me to be easily offended. And really, I guess what I'm praying when I say that is don't let me be offended by the things that reflect a poor reflection of my identity, right? And it's back to this comment that we made earlier, that you said, right now the world is a stage, and with social media and with these silly things that we have in our hands, we have a movie camera in our hands 24/7, 365, all over the globe. So rarely is there a moment that passes that somebody doesn't capture it, right?
No doubt.
And it gets put out there for the world to see, positively or negatively. And I think all that really does is it promotes this false identity that all of us have, that we have to live up to a certain standard. And the moment we don't look like that standard, we don't sound like that standard, I know a lot of people have, especially women, battle with their bodies and how they should look or how they think they should look. And why do we think that way? Well, back in the day, it was through Vogue magazine and other magazines that women would look at in movies. And now, geez, it's in your face 365 all the time. And so we battle this issue of everything is out in front of us, and it's held out in front of us, and it's like a carrot that's dangled out there, and it just promotes this false identity. And I guess that's the prayer that I have, is don't allow me to be easily offended by those things.
Sure.
But instead build up within me a righteousness that allows me to see the failings of the world in a way that bothers me. It should bother me as a follower of Christ when I see things going on, right?
Yep.
And then give me the discernment and the wisdom and the patience and the self-control to be able to respond well to whatever that issue is, up to and including overturning a table and or coming alongside and putting your arm around somebody, whatever the response that he calls me to, right?
I love that you just made a distinction between the recognition of an offense, and God help me to not be easily offended, but then secondarily the response to that offense. Because in Hebrews 4, I think it says that we have a high priest that, like us, was tempted in every way such as man, yet without the response. Offended in every way such as man, yet without the reaction, if I could put it in the context of our conversation. And so just because you're offended isn't necessarily a bad or good thing, right or wrong thing. We can say that a response like what we saw was probably not a good response. So there's two aspects of this issue. There is the response to the offense, which could be, I'm going to blast you on Facebook and humiliate you. I'm going to slap you. I'm going to, fill in the blank, right? And how do you unwind that? Well, you start with where it came from, which is what you're talking about, the root of the offense, right? There's two aspects to this thing. There's the response to it. You could have here, maybe said better, you could have righteous offense in an unrighteous reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, there's the verse that talks about if you want to be great in the kingdom, you have to become a servant of all, which takes humility. And I think a lot of the root of our offense is actually pride, which is probably should have been my first answer.
Yeah.
That we think we deserve better than what we're getting, and we think we deserve everybody to say the nicest things about us, and we think we deserve everybody to just love everything that we do. And when that doesn't happen, or when we're comparing ourselves, as you said, we're comparing ourselves to other people on social media or to these standards, and we don't feel like we're falling short according to worldly ideas of what success or beauty or whatnot is. We're personally offended, and we become the walking wounded in this way when it's the opposite of God's call on our lives. And I actually think staying offended, I see this, it steals people's lives from them, right? It becomes bitterness. It steals all your attention. Everything is going to that instead of going into, sometimes when an offense has happened and I pray about it, when I do this, and I don't always do this, you can talk to many in my family about this, and they will have a lot of other things to say. But when I pray about it, sometimes God gives me a view on that thing that I never would have seen. And it changes, and then he says, what if you went and did this? And I tell you what, every time I'm obedient to that, it's almost like there was an opportunity. When you respond in humbleness to an offense, people kind of are shocked by it. Or when you respond in this ulterior way, this heavenly way, people get surprised. There's so many opportunities to have kingdom principles when you're offended.
Yeah.
I'm offended that your alarm went off.
No.
Okay.
Actually, it's probably, so we were talking about this before. Rachel's timeline around reaction to this, I thought that's where we're going. It's just, let me read you some crazy stuff. And maybe we ought to do a show just on that. We'll just call it Rachel's timeline. Or timeline, whatever it's called.
Rachel's
The feed,
timeline.
or whatever it is.
Yeah, Rachel's timeline now. This means I got to go pick up my
She's
kid.
got to
from
pick
school.
up her daughter, so we need to wrap up our episode. But I do
You
want to
guys can
just
keep talking.
I just want to jump back on one thing really quick as we wrap up.
Yes.
And I want to say this is something in reflection to what you said, John. Is the church has really created a bad name for itself, because the church becomes offended by the sin of the world, and then the church responds in a way or reacts in a way that's not in line with righteousness, right? As opposed to responding with humility, conviction, but humility and love and patience, and with the attitude of drawing in, we instead come with an attitude of a judge that says you've been condemned, and we push away. And that's something all of us, not just the church. We are the church, by the way. The church, we need to really take a reflection on that and think about that in our own lives, and really take the time to evaluate. Here's the takeaway for us all today: is as offense is presented in our life, and it's guaranteed the next turn you come around in life, you will be offended by something, and maybe we use that as a time to really, like you said, John, hold the mirror up and ask some really tough questions. What is the root of this? And why am I offended by this? Is this a response to a wound in my soul that I really need to reflect on and think about and allow Jesus into those places to heal? Or is this a righteous offense that I need to go to the Word, and I need to go to the Father, and I need to spend time in prayer to say, Father, how do you want me to respond to this thing that I've observed that I've been offended by? And maybe that's the takeaway from Will Smith and Chris Rock. And
Don't punch somebody out of nowhere.
That's never a good response.
What would you call it? The Oscar debacle.
Oscar
We're
Debacle.
trying to come up with a word that rhymes with Oscar.
The Oscar imposter.
There you go.
That didn't really work, though. So, hey, thank you for joining us on The Pursuit here today. We hope to see you next time. Have a great week out there, and stay warm. We'll see you next time on The Pursuit.